Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education, featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
And welcome back to the Prepped and Polished podcast. This is episode 162. This is Alexis Avila, your host. And make sure to join the Prepped and Polished podcast community. You can find us on SoundCloud and Facebook and Twitter, Google+, Instagram, YouTube. Just type Prepped and Polished and you'll find us. Go to preppedandpolished.com for more info. And if you need one-to-one tutoring in person or online, 781-753-9951. Have a question or reaction during or after the podcast, email radio@preppedandpolished.com. Let's get to today's guest. Today on episode 162, I'm speaking to Seth Perler, an educator and teen coach. Seth is a teacher, has a bachelor's in education, a master's in education, and has worked with teens with substance abuse issues for 15 years, and also taught on a Navajo reservation. On today's episode, Seth talks about issues teens face today, especially those struggling with executive function disorder, and gives us ways to strengthen your executive function skills. Seth, thanks for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. How you doing today?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Awesome. So share with us a little bit about your background and how you eventually became a teen coach, kind of this authority on working with students with executive function challenges.
Okay, yeah. Well, as a child, I struggled in school quite a bit. My grades looked fine, but my report cards always had comments on them that I was daydreaming, not paying attention, lazy, what have you. So I clearly was getting this message that something was wrong with me is how I felt. I really internalized that. And I've come to find out now that I had inattentive type ADHD. Or ADD, because the H is not there in inattentive type, and really struggled. Got into high school, didn't do well. Got into college, failed out. Got into another college, dropped out before I failed out, and generally felt like a failure. So I ended up starting to work with kids. After I dropped out of my second college, I got this job that I did not care about in any way, shape, or form. It was just a job working with kids, and I ended up loving it. And after 6 months of being there, I decided to dedicate my life to helping kids, and went back to school to become a teacher. I was a teacher for 12 years. And then after being in the system and loving the art of teaching and believing fully in education, the power of education to transform lives, I found that the bureaucracy was not something I wanted to be involved with anymore. I wanted to serve in a different capacity. So that's how I became a coach. I really wanted to serve the kids that I really felt passionate about serving, which are kids who struggle. That's what I love to do, is help kids who struggle.
Fantastic. SethPerler.com. Tell us a little bit about what we'd find on the site, and what types of services do you provide for teens?
Great. SethPerler.com. On my website, the first thing you'll find is there's a box where you can sign up for a series of videos that I send out. And I don't pull any punches. They are fantastic, and they're filled with real strategies that I use with students all the time that work. And one of the important things about how I work with these kids is that it's all about the nuance. It's all about the details. The devil's in the details with how you approach helping kids who struggle with executive function. So the first thing you want to do is sign up for that. I don't spam you or anything, but just go ahead and get it. It's awesome. So I'll send you a series of videos I designed for students to watch. So parents usually watch them. The first one is for parents, and then the rest are for students. But trust me, you'll want to watch all of them if you're a parent, because it really breaks stuff down in a different way. And then I have a blog with tons of content, tons of resources for Santa Monica, education in California, but really they're in the blog articles and the videos on the YouTube channel. There's a lot of great content to help demystify what's going on with your kid, because parents and teachers are confused as to, I know my kid's bright, yet they're getting C's, D's, and F's, and they're struggling, and they're always swimming upstream at the end of the semester. and I can't figure it out. And we've been to therapists, and we've been to tutors, and we've been to this and that. So I really break things down in my articles and such that help demystify these sorts of things. Yeah, you asked about the services that I offer?
Yeah.
I do speaking to parent groups, sometimes with schools, and sometimes at conferences and things like that. And then my primary work is work with my coaching practice with these students. So generally kids who a lot of them are identified with ADHD, autism, Asperger's, dyslexia, sensory integration, something. Some of them have addiction issues. But they're all struggling with executive function in some way, shape, or form. And tied in with executive function, they're often always struggling with emotional regulation.
Yes, you mentioned that in your blog that I read yesterday, for sure. What is executive function disorder? Is this a rising problem?
Whether or not it's a rising problem or if we're better at identifying is debatable. I'm not going to get to that right now. What I don't look at it so much as if it's a rising problem, but I look at what is the problem. So before I tell you what executive function is, I'm going to zoom out and tell you about what I believe the purpose of education is, because we have to be crystal clear on what the heck we're doing anyway with education before we even start to look at how to attack these issues. And to me, the point of education is to help a child. You have this infant that you're raising, and you want them when they're 18, of course 18 doesn't matter, but it's some arbitrary number, but you want them to launch a successful adulthood. You want them to be happy and successful in life. So how do you turn this infant, how do you take this child and help them get whatever skills and knowledge and tools they need to launch? So I use the word launch. Launch, launch, launch. You want them to launch. And anything that interferes with this launch, whether it's a dysfunctional educational system, whether it's emotional issues, whether it's executive function issues, whatever it is, things that interfere with a launch you need to address so that they can have a successful launch in their life and create a great future. So first we want to zoom out and say, what the heck are we doing here? Anyway, we're trying to help them launch. Cool. Now that we have clarity on that, we can start looking at what's interfering with it. And executive function for the kids that I work with tends to be the number one thing that they're all struggling with. So what executive function is it deals with what's called the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Don't worry if that sounds like a big word, but it deals with the front part of the brain developing. And the front part of the brain helps us to execute tasks like cleaning a bedroom, writing a paper, turning in homework, doing homework, keeping a planner, time management, organization, all of these emotional regulation, impulsivity. All of these things are things that when we are trying to execute a task, we need to be able to manage these sorts of things in order to completely execute a task.
You talk about in your bio that one of the best things you could have done was ask for help. How did your asking for help turn things around for you, and how do you encourage the kids you work with to do the same?
That's a great question. So asking for help, is one of the best things I ever did, because when I was struggling with executive function issues as a teenager and as a college student, I sure as heck did not want to ask anyone for help. I didn't want to look different. I didn't want to feel different. I didn't want to acknowledge anything. I didn't even know anything was, quote, wrong or going on, or that I was struggling with executive function. I just internalized that I was a failure, a worthless human being. To be quite honest with your audience, that's how I felt about me, that I just didn't have whatever it took to succeed at life. Now, once I learned to ask for help, I started asking anybody and everybody for help. It's a very weird thing in my practice that this is one of the easier things to teach kids to do, and I'll explain how I do that in a moment. But I started asking professors for help. I would go to office hours. I would ask the counselors in college for help. I would ask tutors or the tutoring center or the writing center for help. I started study groups in my classes, which is another way of asking for help, where I say, hey guys, I'm doing a study group every Wednesday and Thursday at 6. Who wants to join me? And surrounding myself with people who are other serious students. is a way of indirectly asking for help. Going and seeking help from therapists, just humbling myself to say, hey, I don't have the answers. Other people have figured them out. I can ask them. And then finding out that it's not that hard, that people don't look at you funny when you ask them for help, that people actually respect it, and that you often get more than you even bargained for when you ask for help. For example, professors will often teach you the keys to what you need to do to succeed in their particular class just because you spent 5 minutes in their office connecting with them, saying, hey, what's going on? Oh, I noticed you have, banners from this football team in your office, or who are you? Like just connecting. You don't even have to say the word, please help me. Like just getting your feet to walk into the office and saying hi, like they will give you tips and tricks for their class and keys to success. They will take an interest in you. They will start talking to you after class, ask you how it's going. So when you do this, all kinds of other side benefits start to happen. You want me to talk about how I do this with my students?
Sure. Yeah, just give us like a few strategies.
Yeah, so one of the things I do is I help the students. So students have trouble being accountable. So I'll say, are you going to talk to your teacher tomorrow? Oh yeah, I'll talk to him tomorrow. Do you promise? Yeah, I promise. Are you 100% sure or 99% sure? I'm 99% sure. Well, when I hear that, I know that's not 100% sure, and you're not going to talk to your teacher tomorrow.
Right.
So
right.
I help them learn accountability by we write very brief, short, what I call advocacy letters to the teacher. So a lot of times I'll do that for them, and then I'll email it to my student and have them change it and tweak it and send it out. And I make sure that they do this because I watch them send out the email. So I'll say, hey, Jack, let's email this teacher and tell them that you're coming in tomorrow. I don't want to, I'll be there. No, we're going to do it. Let's go ahead. It'll be real easy. I'll even write it for you. So a lot of times I'm scaffolding. The word scaffolding just means that I'm providing as much support to my student as I need to get them to take a little bit of action. If you can get your child to take any action, that is a success, parents. You must understand that and reward every success. Like that's good. So everything counts. But I want them to take a little action. So I'll sort of scaffold, write a little letter. Hey, Mr. Smith, it's me, Jack. I want to come in tomorrow at office hours at about 3 o'clock. How does that work for you? And that helps build in some accountability. It helps the teacher say, am I going to see you at 3? And it doesn't, of course, this is not perfection. I'm dealing exclusively with students who struggle with this stuff, so they don't always show up. But like I said, even sending that is a success. So I'll get them to write little emails, advocacy letters, and I'll really sort of walk them through what kind of conversation. So for parents out there, you can do a little role play with your child if your child will listen to you. Of course, a lot of the families that I work with, their child doesn't want help from the parent. So, but that's some of the ways that I get them to connect with their teachers is just having them write an advocacy letter. Sometimes I'll do it also. I'll email, and parents, you can do this. If your child is embarrassed by it, you can tell the teacher to keep it on the lowdown. Hey, my child is supposed to come in to see you tomorrow. Can you please help support us by making sure that becomes a reality? Please don't tell my kid that I said this. I really am trying to help them get help from you, not to create more tension in the family. So you can just call it what it is and reach out that way as well.
That's huge, and teaching them accountability, teaching them to commit, take action. I was wondering, do you work with students online?
I do. I do some Skype students, yeah.
Some Skype? Okay. And are you able to kind of sit down virtually with them to kind of do some of this?
As far as the virtual coaching, when I'm doing Skype, phone, and text coaching with clients, the key is that they have to want it. If a student doesn't want it, it is a complete waste of time and money for the family, and there's no reason to do it. But if the student says, you know what, I do want to feel better about myself, I do want to feel more successful in school, I do want more strategies, they can still be resistant. In fact, probably 90% of the kids that start working with me come in resistant. Very few kids come in saying, oh yeah, this sounds great, but once the rapport is built and once they start feeling success, then you see growth. But there has to be willingness. If they're completely shut down, they need help that's beyond me working with them online.
Can you give us just a few strategies, like your go-tos for working with students with some challenges, executive function challenges?
Yeah. One of them is helping them understand what executive function is. So I go in depth with my students and help them, and demystifying what executive function is helps take a lot of the shame around it, because these kids get a lot of messages like you're lazy, you must not care about school, and you're not trying hard enough. So those three messages are very common and are often internalized and are very shaming. So I deal with, like, what is going on with executive function? Your brain is still developing. Executive function is going to keep developing until you're about 30 years old. Like, you're going to be okay. Let's deal with this. And that tends to make it more objective than emotional. So that's a very important common tool. And probably the second, I don't know if this is the biggest tool, but the second biggest thing that I do is that these kids do not have systems. They are not systematizers, if that's even a word. They do not systematize naturally. Kids who are more linear, detail-oriented type thinkers systematize very well. They really like feeling organized and feeling on top of things. These kids are not the kids I'm working with. I'm working with the ones who are disorganized, who are resistant, who are avoidant, and who don't have systems. Their bedrooms are often a mess, their car is a mess, their life is a mess, they can't keep track of details for the life of them, they're losing homework. They can even do homework, and they can even do it really well and still get a 0 because they're in a class with a teacher who gives a 0 for missing work, even if they've done it. And that is very discouraging. So one of the biggest things that I do is teach them systems. Now, these are not rocket science. These are systems that we see all the time, but schools don't teach them directly. Schools assume that kids learn them through osmosis, because so many linear kids do seem to learn them through osmosis. So these systems are like systems for using a planner, systems for using folders and managing your schoolwork, routines for going to bed, routines for waking up, sacred study space, a space that's actually designed to focus. Also, that's designed to remove distractions. Like, these kids haven't created a sacred place for them to be focusing at home on schoolwork. So I'm teaching them systems that everybody needs. And if you sign up for the toolkit or explore my site, I break it down in many different ways, but it's pretty straightforward. What's important about these systems, though, and I'll just mention one to give an example of this, is, again, the devil is in the details. And I'll give you one of my favorite examples, and that is the 3-ring binders. A lot of people who are highly organized love 3-ring binders because it helps them to separate things and to feel very organized and to feel on top of things. There's a place for everything. Well, let me tell you that a lot of schools will demand, or a lot of teachers will demand, that students use a 3-ring binder in their class. And they often assume, well, if I have a disorganized kid and I teach them to use this great organizational system like a 3-ring binder, then they will become more organized. No, that is not how it works with these kids. With these kids who are naturally disorganized, to use a 3-ring binder is way too detail-oriented for their brains. They're very global, big picture thinkers, and they don't care about paper. So for them to manage hundreds of papers in a massive binder is a successful strategy for them. So, for example, for them, if the teacher allows it, if the teacher really won't allow it, I have to help the kid learn how to use the binder. But if the teacher will allow it, and most are flexible enough to understand what's going on when you start communicating with them, then I give them a color-coded, simple folder system. We label the front and label the back. These kids lose everything, so we put their name huge on everything. Like, there are little nuances that you have to worry about with these kids. These kids you can say, do you have that paper in your folder? And they say, no, I know I turned it in. And if I scour through the folder, I find the paper. So this happens more often than you believe, but at least they're getting it in the folder. But part of what they need to learn with the folders also is to overhaul them on a weekly basis, to get rid of stuff they don't need. So these things, they're not taught directly. They're not having conversations. So I go into depth with systems and with the nuances of how can we make this apply to a kid who isn't organized, who doesn't manage time, who's stressed out, who's overwhelmed, who doesn't care about busy work or certain details, and how do we help them to feel successful and to buy in and to get systems that'll work for their brain.
That's amazing. And do you find that adults could benefit from these strategies?
I actually have had a good handful of parents who have asked me to do coaching with them. So sometimes I have parents who find out that they or their spouse have ADHD or have executive function problems, and sometimes I'll work with them. But yeah, I mean, definitely the strategies are the same in terms of that adults still need a nuanced way, a system for themselves that they're going to manage time, that they're going to manage tasks, that they're going to manage the things in their life, the material stuff. So yeah, adult stuff. I mean, adults can benefit from it because it's the same thing. I mean, they're still trying to execute meaningful tasks in their life. That brings up a whole can of worms that I'm not going to open, which is all the curriculum that kids are learning meaningful to them.
Right.
But as adults, we get to choose, and we want to be able to execute things that are meaningful to us so we can have a great adulthood. So we still need the same executive function skills in order to manage any job or career or lifestyle as an adult.
Wow. And how now that when you're teaching a student executive function skills, how do you ensure that they're reinforced so that when they go to adulthood it sustains? So how do you build that foundation?
That's an awesome question. And part of what I do, and this is part of why online coaching is not as good as in-person coaching, is that I see my students about 3 times a week. I am in their face. Not in a bad way, but I am in their backpack. I am just, let me see your backpack. What's going on? Let's look in here. Let me see your folders. You know, this week I want you to bring every single thing home from your locker. I don't care if it's a gum wrapper. Get it to me. Don't worry. There's no stress around it. We're going to do this. And a lot of it is me teaching them. Here's the system. Because a lot of parents will say, well, they know what to do, but they're just not doing it. Well, of course they're not doing it because they have not built the neural pathways they have not built the executive function to be able to manage things at the level that they're being expected to do. So part of it is giving them the foundation of the knowledge. Here's what we're going to do. Here's why. Here's how, right? But part of it is the application and the maintenance, the constant maintenance. I'm seeing them 2 or 3 times a week, and we are maintaining. We're doing it over and over and over. And again, it's not rocket science. It's not trying to force them or fear them into building a habit. We're just doing this. Let's just do it again. We're going to go through the backpack again. We're going to check your grades again. We're going to organize the folders again. Don't worry about this homework. I will have your parents turn it in for you. I don't want you thinking about turning this in. I want you thinking about tomorrow and what you have to worry about tomorrow. So basically, it's doing it over and over. So setting that foundation for adulthood, there's no magic bullet. There's no easy recipe at all. It is pounding the pavement. It is doing the same actions over and over, having the same conversations over and over. And it's also rewarding them over and over. And I'm not saying BS rewards, oh, you're such a good boy. Thank you so much. I'm so proud. I'm saying real, clear, verbal rewards of, you know what? You just did X, Y, and Z. And you weren't doing that a month ago. And that's pretty cool. And I'm really glad to see that. Like very specific so that they can really reflect on something real that they've done that's helping them be more successful. That's a real important key to it as well.
Yeah, this is the second time in the podcast you really emphasize the importance of just praising even the small successes. It sounds like it really just goes a long way when you're going through this training and struggling.
Yeah, one thing that I'll do with a lot of parents, we're not used to praising a lot. We're really used to saying, this is what you're not doing right. Why aren't you doing this? And it's really easy for us as adults. And parents, you should not feel ashamed of this or feel bad about yourself. That is not the point of my message in any way, shape, or form. But if I can give you a better tool that's going to help your kid have a better future, then that's what we want to do. And one thing that I do with a lot of parents when I have this sort of a discussion is I talk about the 3-to-1 rule, which is try to have 3 compliments for every 1 perceived negative. So even if you say to your child, look, you need to clean up your room today, and they perceive that as a negative, then and you're trying to be calm, but they're getting agitated from it, it pushes their buttons. You really want to have 3 sincere compliments or praises to give them. Now, parents, when I tell them this, it really is hard to contemplate 3-to-1. And you don't have to count. That's not the point of it either. And you can do 5-to-1, but realistically, if you're doing 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, that's probably a success.
Okay. Good to know.
Just tell them specifically, yeah, but you're so right. It goes so far. Like when you look a kid in the eye and say, look, it is so cool that you're doing this. Actually, I want to compliment you. I love the questions you're asking. So I didn't know what you were going to ask me, but you asked very good questions, and that's a sincere compliment. I was going to wait till after, but that's a great example for right now. I really appreciate the questions you ask because they get at the heart of what I'm trying to do. So I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, here's an easy question. How do we best get in touch with you?
On SethPerler.com, I have a little contact page, and just shoot me an email through there. My actual email is Seth@SethPerler.com, but you can just shoot me one through the email box, and it comes straight to my actual human being's inbox.
Perfect. This is really helpful, and I really appreciate your time, and I'd love to have you back on the podcast.
I'd love to do it. I'd love to dive deeper into any topic you want.
Awesome. Thanks, Seth. Have a good day.
All right, guys. Take care. Good
This
luck.
wraps up our show today. This was episode number 162 with teen coach Seth Perler. Episode 163 is coming shortly. It's our next tutoring tips episode. And for another related conversation, be sure to check out podcast number 32 with executive function expert Sarah Ward. To access episode 32 and today's episode 162 with Seth, as well as all of our podcasts, here are 2 ways to listen. preppedandpolished.com/podcast or go to soundcloud.com/preppedandpolished. Thank you for joining us at the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.